Recording.
Recording.
We can start day 2.
Day 2. Where's my clip?
While I make our egg coffee. I don't think they can see me making my egg coffee though.
Hi.
Whatever. You want to see me make my egg coffee? And the eggshells.
And the eggshells. They give it an extra crunch.
What were we talking about a second ago that we wanted to tell everybody about?
We were talking about getting information from various sources.
One source.
One source.
Right.
Versus taking what works for you and leaving the rest.
Right, and that's one of the things that I like the message of, is that my message is not the only way, it's just another way. And It's part of it. It could be part of someone's puzzle. The same way there's a lot of teachers, like, you know, let's say Eckhart Tolle and Abraham Hicks and some of these people who have a message that's really powerfully healing for people, but is not it. It's limited, but people need to hear that message, you know, first, so that they can have certain doorways opened. Because if that isn't open first, then certain things are not going to resonate at all.
Sure.
So we need, like, every teacher we come across kind of reaches us at the level that we're at.
Sure.
And that's, you know, what we take, rather than trying to take everything that resonates and doesn't resonate and having to, like, have the cognitive dissonance fight around, you know, all those pieces. But the other piece, too, is, like, Source itself. Its whole mission is to dig into smaller and smaller pieces of itself.
Yes.
You know, it is always breaking down the details into more and more detailed versions of its self-examination.
Yes, exactly. Well put.
And so that's a really important thing to realize, that we're always getting into deeper layers. We're always getting into deeper levels of experience and awareness and all that kind of stuff. 54.
So another thing about sources of information, I feel like
well, all sources present information in the context of their experience and their perceptions.
Exactly.
You know, and some people have been so thoroughly programmed by certain symbology and things that they come across from early childhood, that when they are presented with certain ideas, people tend to be attracted to a savior mentality.
Yes.
And so,
and that's it. That's exactly it.
Well, everybody wants to be saved rather than saving themselves or stepping up themselves. And so there's this pattern where we've been programmed to say we don't have the power ourselves, we need a savior. And that's been literally throughout history, we've been programmed with that message. You know, even things
so then
like,
when you come into,
you know, and then we come up with you find new information, like the hidden hand stuff or the law of one stuff, which creates a really strong, and you guys, if you haven't looked up the law of one, Ra and the hidden hand, who is also from that race, it is a channeled teaching. It is incomplete, so it's not entirely accurate information, but a lot of it is very, very accurate.
And it's stepping stone information.
It's stepping stone information. So a lot of it still programs people to wait for a savior. But the information contained in it is part of a larger disclosure of the workings of the universe. And so if you're looking for that kind of thing, if you just look at the law of one, that's a good place to start and read how that program works, because it gives you a framework of certain concepts that I'm going to be talking about. Like I said, it is incomplete and it is not accurate. It is still a channeled teaching that was channeled to mislead. But there's a lot of truth in it, because the truth is how people become misled. Is masking the truth with lies. But that's what happens, is people are always looking for a savior. You know, they want the doctor to heal them. They want the money to show up to rescue them from their debt. They want, you know, all of these different experiences to come up to rescue them, rather than them doing the certain stages of work that their contracts in the universe are kind of circulating them to step through. And
that comes up with teachers and guides. You just expect
Well, the teachers all get people want the teacher to save them, or they want to tap into an information source that will save them.
Yeah.
And the information source keeps saying, I'm not here to save you, I'm here to teach you that you already are saved.
Exactly.
And that you already have, and not in the way that, Jesus teaches that he died, the whole died for our sins on the cross thing is a bullshit story meant to manipulate people. Not that it's not a real thing, but the way that it's been bastardized is heavily distorted away from what really happened. If people start looking up Jesus was a Buddhist, if they start looking up did Jesus really die on the cross, and they see the way that those things happen, you see the mimicry of how those stories were distorted to create that savior story, when he wasn't necessarily anything more special than anybody else. He just realized he realized how to integrate those truths that nobody else had integrated yet. And I had made a video with Yvonne. Maybe I'll grab my notes and do it on this one in a little bit, because it was really good stuff that I showed you the other day with the translations of those texts.
That stuff was pretty cool.
Were really, really good, and I think they'll resonate a lot with what the other things were that I was talking about, because those translations or those teachings are so mistranslated to say you don't have power. And that's not what's being said at all.
I think that's such a huge program running.
It's a huge program, and you see it. It's run.
It pops up everywhere in like the most subtle of ways.
Goodness, when you put an egg in here, you have to like stand on.
I know.
It.
But it's the most beautiful color.
I know. Look at that. Look at the change. Like, look how pretty the color is. It changes when. So this is coffee that I roasted.
And it's a dark roast.
And that's a dark. Yeah. She roasted it this time. Let's be fair. All right. But yeah, it's one of those things that people are so heavily programmed to, just through like from school and from all these different indoctrinations, to have certain thought patterns collectively in the consciousness that don't work for us. They're meant to keep us in a thought loop.
Yeah, in school, you take, like, the teachers are your they grade you on the things they teach you, So you're already programmed to remember everything someone says as being gospel, you know what I mean? Because you're going to get graded on it, so it's like... Ooh,
well,
dang.
And what people don't realize too is that, even more than the indoctrination that happens in school and whatever, it's our devices that people don't realize. Not only is there information in the form of light that's being translated, but there's programs like MK Ultra that didn't disappear, that they turned into our cell phones and our televisions and these kinds of things on very subtle levels that are outputting subliminal information. So it's subconscious information.
Yeah. Is that twice?
Yeah. That basically runs operating signals on our system that we're not even aware of are running.
Well, it's all so subtle. There's so much information that is so subtle, and unless you are starting to become,
and it's too fucking smart.
It's the culmination. Exactly.
It's just the thing is the entities that are responsible for this programming and this mind control and putting all the bacteria and parasites in our bodies to alter our hormones and control how those things are working. So many people, and this is a download that's evolving, so please don't take this as gospel yet. I'm still researching it. But a lot of what I've been learning is that our gut bacteria and all these things are not actually, there's no such thing as good and bad bacteria. So we have our mitochondria, and those are good bacteria because they're part of our cell that produces energy. However, my current theory that I have been overlaying with a lot of the other pieces of global programming and global, let's say, conspiracy, are that these parasites are an ancestral imprint of karma. So those parasites we get from our mother. So we get all our bacteria from our mother as we're coming out of the womb. And so whatever embedded information that they're getting is in the form of those bacteria. Those bacteria then eat our food. They take our information and they mistranslate our information based on the types and things of bacteria that are in our body. And so my current thought is that if you look at food as information, meaning we don't need food, we need the information that food contains so that our body can produce what it needs energetically, because we get energy from other sources, and the laws of thermodynamics do not account for the fact that our mitochondria produce more output energy than they produce from input energy. So there's another source of energy flowing through them that is functioning to power our body.
Food.
And that comes from information, from the ether, whatever you want to call it. But those bacteria are claimed to be needed to help digest our food.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that's true. We have every protein and enzyme in our body to digest the food that we're eating. We have every mechanism in our system to digest the food that we're eating. The bacteria, while they make up 90% of our body,
the food we're eating.
well, they also shit in our body, and who knows how much of our shit is ours and not theirs, right? It's usually parasitic eggs, and I've talked about that, last year on my newsletters and things like crazy that got everybody, doing that work, because it makes such a big difference in how you feel.
It freaked everybody out, and now everyone talks about poop, and it's great. But yeah, absolutely, that's interesting.
And so I've been thinking about that those are the bacteria in the parasites that we're imprinted with. If you look at the Matrix, when they pulled the parasite out of his stomach, all of those things are imprinted, and we weren't even aware of it in our mirrors. And all of the TV shows we watch, all of those things, they're just all mirrors of those different layers of things that are happening in the real world that are just subtle hints on how the nature of reality is actually working. And people are sitting there wanting to believe it because part of it resonates as true. As true stories that have occurred in some part of distant memory.
That's the thing about things that were true. Like, all the best deception is rooted in truth. So it's like, that's why things ring partially true, and it's like, oh, this must be true because some part of me is like resonating with this. But it's, you know what I mean? It's like, and that is the best deception.
But that too, and if you start looking at the whole puzzle on how these things are imprinted. So if you have the moon and Saturn outputting in 5G, creating a vortex and outputting a long wavelength signal. That long wavelength signal, like I posted on my post too, is going to slow the vibration of the hydrogen bonds around the water. When the vibration slows, time slows.
Yeah.
When time slows to a stop, are you alive or dead?
Exactly.
Okay? And so what's happening is they are putting dampers on the ability for us to transmit and receive information by bathing us in 5G, by bathing us in Saturn lunar energies that keep us grounded in a reality that is not our ultimate reality.
It's like swimming in water versus swimming in mud. Like, you're just not going to be able to move as well.
Right.
So it's that. Yes.
I'm very
Stevia,
slow.
please.
I'm very slow at this today.
It's okay. You're using your brain.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not, actually. You're just channeling. So
So
you should be able to make coffee.
Yeah. I can't multitask. I can't even walk and chew bubble gum.
There.
But yeah, so there's some really cool elements of those programs that are running that if you look at how we are programmed with our, if people were to look at astrology, and most people don't understand what astrology really is. They think horoscope, and then they turn their brain off and some people like to read their horoscope for their sun sign,
and that's fun, and
but
that's
it's
how I got
it's scratching the surface, and people don't realize that the time you were born created an electromagnetic snapshot in the
of where
planetary
everything
arrangement.
Was.
Those planetary arrangements literally program your experience here on Earth. And if you looked at that map, there would be no argument in your head whatsoever that is the truth.
Well, both of us have looked into our natal charts, and there's just very specific and
the
so much
everything.
Yeah, timing and specific information and deep truths that resonate on such a level that you cannot deny that.
Exactly. And your natal birth chart is your soul blueprint, is basically what it is. It is the work you came here to do, and you can use it as a tool to see how all of these things arrange, so you understand the lessons that you're trying to learn throughout your life and where they might show up in your experiences, clarity. Whether it's money or business or relationships or just trauma, those kinds of things, and how you can work through those kinds of puzzles. The problem is, well, the benefit of it is it's a really good tool for solving the work you came here to do. But it is a third density construct. It is a thing that ultimately is not going to serve us.
Yeah.
And so it is a really good tool to help us clear the pieces of us that are keeping us grounded in an old, heavy reality. When we are trying to level up and upgrade and shed those layers of karma, the astrological chart is a really good tool for being able to look at that and do that work in a more precise way. But it also is a really easy way to
give
get
your power
in your own
again.
way. It's another way to give your power again, to let that predict your future, to let that predict what you're going to feel this week. And it is a cool tool for that, and it is amazingly accurate, but eventually it won't be.
Yeah.
And eventually we don't want it to be.
Yeah.
And that's what I have found at this point, where it doesn't
I'm not
resonate
resonating as much. Oh my gosh. Yeah. With
and so that's a really
watching
important...
all the coming up this month in astrology type videos and teachers, that stuff, I was taking it as gospel for a while, and then I realized that now it's not resonating as much, because I'll check it every once in a while just to for fun
even,
to see.
Kaipacha has great stuff, and a lot of the new paradigm astrology is really useful, but it's a repeat. It's always saying, you're going to have work to do. You're going to have work to do.
You're going to have plenty of work to do. The energies are really intense this month.
Yeah,
they're always intense.
They're always going to be intense. They're going to be intense for a couple more years.
Yeah.
And we are clearing, and if you do that more diligently, then you don't need the cosmic impact to give you the push.
Sure.
And that's part of what's happening is we're using that. We're basically on a big clock that when we're born is wound up, and that clock unwinds as we're going through life and continues that spiral movement, and it's all sequenced through the galactic center. And so the galactic center, as we're revolving around that galactic center, is another clock that is pulsing at a certain level of frequency information that then tells our solar system what information to output, so that it keeps us on a regulated path, so that this simulation or this illusion or this hologram that we see through our brain actually operates the way that we want. It is the software rhythm that is structuring the reality, basically. Because without that framework to keep those rules contained, the rules of our universe would not work in the way that we could experience them. And so that was the purpose of Earth and of this circumstance, was to create a set of confinements and rules so that we could experience ourselves in ways that we could not experience because we knew too much.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we had to forget and lose some of that stuff. But that wheel was perverted and distorted, because then instead of us being able to take from our higher selves and create a body and come into the body to experience the miracles that we can create from this three-dimensional reality, we were hijacked at some point. And so we were hijacked, and a net was formed, and suddenly now, instead of us being able to come and go to play this MMORPG, we are...
That's probably why I like those so much.
Well, they mirror,
exactly.
and so, whether that is the actual, there's always layers of game that can be explained to it and imprinted on it.
Sure.
But, we got hijacked, and so now these other entities hijacked us for the energy that we produce by running in this game, or running this hamster wheel. The same thing that was mirrored in, what was the show we watched? Like, OA? Was that what the one they were doing the game to charge the battery? And it's the same kind of energy that we are in that loop to charge a battery for other entities that are not necessarily out for our bad, but are in for their own
good, and it's not. They're not taking into consideration
the thing is,
what
these entities that are interfacing and that give me the information that I get, that I'm able to communicate with, and that we have in the turn of events that we're facing, are so vastly more expanded than us that their awareness is just like, I mean, if you look at the Atlantean civilizations, they too, during their golden ages, had that kind of expansion and activation, and there's a lot of historical things that have come up to the surface to show hints at that. And even the Law of One talks about some of those technologies and how that kind of stuff happened and where it came from. But a lot of the technologies that had come to us are channeled technology ideas that exist because these entities have been around for billions of years. And so our concept of time is a construct created by the moon and Saturn. And so we're not aware of the fact that there's this
container.
Big...
Time is a container for us to experience.
Yeah, and we need it because that time
Otherwise,
with light is what gets things to move, and it's movement that is, you know, part of the transformation. You know, it's the you know, the same way I always talk about movement. You know, movement is the transformation, whether it's the movement of light causing a movement in our system, or our movement moving lymph to generate energy. All of these different things play a big role.
But we need time to experience all of those things, because otherwise it's, you know, we're...
Sorry guys, this is going to get loud for 2 seconds.
I'm
not going to do it the whole time.
That's okay.
I'm not magnetizing our coffee today because it's going to be too loud for our chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I think a lot of people, you know, why don't you bring up what you mentioned this morning if it's not too personal?
No, that's fine. What
you know, so one of the things that Annie was mentioning this morning is that she was journaling when she had after her meditation.
Thank you.
And something that came up was that she was having a lot of guilt from her. Why don't you tell the rest of the story, and then I'll piece in what I pieced in.
So good. So I moved to America from Russia when I was like 6.5, and ever since, well, I was just telling Ryan this morning that I was feeling guilty, carrying a lot of guilt for, in essence, the story of abandoning my family to move to a different place completely. So there's some stuff there, but.
And so one of the things that brought up, and I called her out on it really quickly, was that is storytelling. There's no element of that is what's happening is you are imprinting your perception and telling their story for them.
Exactly.
And it's the same way.
Because I don't know if they feel resentment. I'm making, like, that's my perception of that story. And in essence, I'm making up what they are feeling and responding to that.
And all of these things are mirrors, you know, and so they're not necessarily the resentment that you feel or the guilt that you feel around abandoning your family. You didn't abandon your family.
No.
One, you were 6. It wasn't your choice.
It was not my choice.
You know, you don't know what the circumstances were, and most likely that guilt has nothing to do with you actually leaving your family. It has to do with probably a prenatal trauma where your mom or your dad or somebody was given a lot of flack for choosing to leave, or for choosing to not support something, or for
a commitment that they backed out of, or something.
And so that's a series of patterns, and that showed up in your life, you know, and we've seen that in your patterns where you had a series of events where you kept bailing last minute and not bailing, I hate to say that, but you kept leaving. You kept leaving something that you were meant to leave, but had this sense that you were betraying somebody by doing so.
And it can be as simple as leaving a job where I like really connected with the people and respected the people I worked with and the relationships that we had. So, you know, it can be as simple as that. And I definitely felt that with my last job. But go ahead.
Yeah, so it's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to get outside of the storytelling that they're having. And so I think that's a really good example to see that, because, you know, you came downstairs saying, hey, I'm having a lot of guilt around abandonment or abandoning my family. and started to tell the different pieces of it that were making you look at it. And I immediately stopped you and said, no, that's storytelling. What is actually happening here? And that's a really big thing to start looking at, is what stories are you telling around your relationships or around your
patterns.
Your patterns.
Just your patterns in general,
really.
That's it.
Because
that's
a lot of times we lie to ourselves, or we tell a grander story or a smaller story because of the way that it allows us to dissipate what we're feeling or explain what we're feeling instead of explain it away instead of process it through.
And I think that's your cerebral mind that is wanting the explanation, is wanting, you know what I mean? It's where humans want to know, you know, and it's like,
well, we do, and we're put here with a mystery of life.
Yes, exactly.
You know, to discover this stuff, and that's part of.
So that's
the
a
fun,
driving force. So I get it.
And a lot of these things are catalysts, you know, and they need to be catalysts because, you know, whether the truth is that we are a hijacked race that has been manipulated, which is very, very likely. Is ultimately irrelevant because that is the story, and it's a fun story to hear, but it ultimately will get in our way if we live a life of fear that somebody else is in control.
Exactly.
And so the message behind that is that, yes, okay, now you have an idea of how the world is really working, so you can step off the hamster wheel.
And the thing
not
is,
to walk on it still.
Where I got stuck a lot of times, and I still do, but I'm starting to let go of it, is you fill in all of the details in the story, all of the little,
and it's really easy to do that,
and you get lost in the sauce, and then you're not
Will
actually
you do the
doing
rest
the
of this
work.
for a second? Let me grab my notebooks. I think this will be really good.
Okay. 20 seconds. No, that's okay. I'm done with the TVCS. 19 seconds left. Okay.
But there's a lot of it. There was a passage. Let me see if I can find that quote. I'll get to it again later once I start reading these things to you. I got a notebook full of downloads that I'm sure I'll go through with you guys at some point because there's some really cool stuff.
Analog downloads.
Analog downloads. Where was it? Well, I'll go through these in a second once I do this. So I'll go through these with you guys in a second because they're really, really good and I think you'll like them. Let me just do this real quick. So these...
Okay, so
I was channeling the Jesus. The one from Big Lebowski, though.
Ryan's getting really into bowling.
I can't bowl to save my life, actually. My brother and dad can. So I was looking, I had watched a video by Jacob Lieberman that was really good. He talks a lot about light, and he's worth looking up if you haven't listened to any of his stuff. And then I came across, he had a quote that he quoted from Jesus, and it was a section out of, I believe it was the Nag Hammadi texts, or the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of those. And I was going through, that led me to go through, again, the Gospel of Thomas, which I've read years ago, and gone through quite a lot. And it's interesting, in the way that it contrasts the programming that's in other religious texts. Because it supports it, but it adds an additional framework that was really interesting. And so I started looking through it and getting some really cool insights that overlapped the message that I have been giving to everybody else lately.
So fun.
So I have some quotes here, and I'm going to translate them for you.
So these are all from...
yeah, these are just from the text. I have a couple of others. Will you grab my iPad? Yeah. It's in there. If you do not abstain from the world... Wait, is that the right one? No, I'm on the wrong page. Let's start here. All we really know is what we know by heart. So that brings me to the cerebral versus innate knowledge. And one of the things that I found is the more cerebral knowledge you have, the less innate knowledge you can tap into. And what that means is the more you're braining something, the less you're going to understand something and integrate whatever it is that you're working through. and over history, these entities have used symbology and symbolic programming because the symbols like the cross and like the tree, not like the swastika and like the Eye of Horus, all these kinds of things are symbols that, regardless of what we are told they mean, contain an original meaning that outputs a resonant information imprint. And so even though we're told the cross means something, even though we're told that the Eye of Horus or something means something, what it really means is likely very different from what we're told. And so if you look at the areas that those different symbols are used in the outside world, you start to see the programs that are running to tie us to certain objects and ideas so that those run as an undercurrent through our life.
And Eye of Horus is like the dollar bill, yeah?
Yeah. Lots of, so you see it as Sauron, you see it as the Eye of Sauron, you see it as this dollar bill, you see it on the CBS logo, you see it in a lot of celebrities who take pictures covering up one eye. All of those things are mirrored and mirrored and mirrored.
And they're so subtle, and all of this stuff is so subtle
it's
that
super
you just
subtle.
Can't.
And so what Jesus had said was when the eye becomes single, and he used the word haplos, which means to weave. When the eye becomes single, you shall enter into the kingdom. Two become one. Experience no preference. When love and hate are absent, then the world is clear. And so what he's talking about, there's another section. When you make two into one, then you make outside like inside. And so what that brought me to is all the things that I've been talking about. So he's talking about integrating light and dark, so your shadow and your light. And a lot of times we are programmed to go up and suppress our shadow and to hide from our shame and to have all of these things that are not, we're told to hide from the darkness and be afraid of the darkness. And what he's saying is it's not about being afraid of the darkness, it's about integrating it as part of you. And once you learn to integrate it, you step into who you're meant to be in that way. And so light exists inside a person of light, and he shines on the world. If he does not shine, then there is darkness, which is a really good passage, telling people that you have your own light that is meant to shine on the world. Everyone does. They are their own lantern in some way. And if you have that light and you are not sharing it and you are not shining it, then you feel that and you feel depressed and you feel anxious and you feel pain and you have suffering that occurs because your soul is telling you to shine and you are suppressing that shine by allowing other people outside of you to suppress your shine. And so what he's saying is you need to shine in spite of the outside pressure, crushing pressure. If you do not abstain from the world, you will not find the kingdom. And what he's saying is you don't want to, it's not about going into the cave and rejecting the world. What he's saying is if you do not wipe the slate of programming that is running your life, then you cannot find the kingdom because your programming is getting in your way from knowing the truth.
And by the way, the kingdom, like heaven on earth, it's here. You can tap into that when you release all of the stuff.
And that's what this ascension process is that integration of that expansion.
It's not like a place elsewhere. It's here. It's just a different version.
Too. No prophet is accepted in his own village, which is very true. Anybody who comes out with new ideas is ostracized immediately because people have cognitive dissonance and they don't like to change their minds. And so,
not only that,
part of it is
if they're in their own village, they have grown up. So that's a challenge when you start to change, and it's like, what are all these people around me going to expect? Like, what are they gonna think of me? That's like, initially, that's a challenge. That's, again, something to overcome when you're working on shining your light.
Well, and that's the point. The blanket or the veil that's put on is meant to, it's the same way we have to add resistance to our movements. Mm-hmm. If you do everything without any resistance, resistance is what allows something to manifest. Yeah. People think resistance is what blocks you, but resistance is what allows something to conduct current. Something allows it to move into the reality. And so when we bathe things in cyberspace or in the 0-point field and start resonating our magnetic field to it, the resistance that we create in our system is what allows that to actually start moving. If there's no resistance, it can't move. And too much resistance, it goes the wrong way, right? And so we have to have a balance of how that works.
And you feel that out, you know?
Yeah, and that's what it is. And it's a very deep process.
Yeah.
And most people, the benefit from most people is they are so blind that it works initially. But as they become less and less blind, the ease of it becomes more difficult because they start getting in their own way because they know too much.
Exactly.
And so there's that parabolic kind of curve where, oh, this is awesome, oh, this sucks, oh, this is awesome again. And so that tends to happen with a lot of people.
Well, it's like, let's translate it into the physical. It's like reaching a plateau when you're working out. And you have to change the way you train in order to continue.
Well, that too, and yeah, I mean, it's part of it is that we're always confronted with blocks that are meant to change which track we're running on, and because we have a track we're meant to be running on, and if we are getting off track, we're always having feedback to get back on track. It's a lane departure warning.
Yeah, exactly.
That happens all the time, and once we get strong enough to realize
sensitive
it,
enough to
because we always see it. We always see
things...
it, and I'm going to show it later in one of the other quotes that I'm going to get to, which will be really, really good. Anyway, let's continue. So what you will hear with one ear, proclaim with the other ear, which I really love. So for me, I'm getting all of these downloads. I am not meant to take these downloads and put them under my bed and hide them for myself. I am meant to take any insights that I'm getting and share them with people. And whatever resonates with people, they can take it or leave it.
It's like you're providing a buffet, and you don't have to take one of everything.
Well,
you
no,
can just
that's
fill up your plate with what works for you. You know. Yeah.
Well, that's not even it. It's that the idea is that if you have wisdom that you can share, you must share it.
Yeah.
Is what that's saying.
Yes.
No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, nor does he put it in a hidden place. Rather, he puts it on a lampstand.
Same thing.
Same thing. It's if you have a light to shine, you should be shining, right? You don't hide yourself, except that's what we're programmed to do, and that's not what we're meant to do. He was asked, when will we see God? This is one of my favorite ones. When you undress without being ashamed, and take your clothes under your feet like children and trample them. And what he's saying is when you are willing to be vulnerable and naked and present and playful like a child, that's when you realize you are God, or you are experiencing what the construct is. And I think, to kind of derail a little bit, I think the concept of God is misleading. I think a better way to look at it is we have one creator who has in order to experience himself as creator, has created divinations of individuality below that. And at each of these tiers, they have individual, they continue to spread out into individuations of creator. Unique expressions of creator. And when that unique expression of creator is so beyond what our current level of awareness is, we perceive it as God. And so there are gods above gods, above gods, above gods at different layers because of the layers of ascension and experience that they have. And so the Yahweh Satan story that created the biblical story of God versus Satan and that kind of thing was a series of entities that came to this planet something like 12,000 years ago. And the Yahweh story and the Satan story very strongly overlap the series of events that happened in the Garden of Eden. And what happened is the people who were here at the time saw these entities as so much more powerful than we were, that these entities start genetically modifying and do different things to our body to alter how we can behave. And so Satan came down and was talking to Yahweh, and Yahweh needed a catalyst because he wanted his people to love him, but they all loved him no matter what because there was not any duality at the time. And so Satan came down and said, I have an idea. Let's give him an option to eat from this tree. And the tree was not, it was imaginary. All it was to say, here's something you didn't know about. And that something that they didn't know about was a seed. And Satan's intention was to say, you actually don't realize it, but you're already divinations of God. He doesn't want you necessarily to know that because it defeats the purpose of the game he's trying to play. In the same way that we have all of these different layers of entities that have different agendas for their own expansion and their own experience. And as part of that, they use the different layers to their advantage or disadvantage, or to aid in the ascension of lower entities, or to take advantage of the ascension of lower entities to be able to do that. And I'm not going to go too much more in depth with that story because there's a lot to it. But if there's... I think there's actually some good excerpts on Gaia that talked about it and some other things. If you send me a message, I'll see if I can dig it out for you. Okay, so let's keep going with this. Did I do that one?
Which one?
Yeah.
Yes.
No one drinks old wine and immediately desires to drink new wine. Meaning you cannot be doing the old pattern and immediately step into a new pattern. You have to release that old pattern before stepping into the new. Okay? You're not going to be simultaneously drinking the old wine and have a craving for new wine at the same time. The bad taste will ruin the new taste. So you have to release that old piece before you can step into the new piece. If two make peace with each other in the same house, then they will say to the mountain, move away, and it will move away. Two in the same house. Our body, our system, is the house in this case. And if we integrate light and dark, masculine and feminine energies within our system, that integration of shadow is what allows us to get outside of our own way. And so the mountains that are in our way will automatically move at our will because we no longer are blocking ourselves from that. When will the resurrection take place? That resurrection you are waiting has already come, but you do not recognize it. And the thing that he's talking about is the loop that I talked about, I think, on yesterday's video. When we're reincarnating through this loop, our memories are wiped. And so we've been through this loop many, many times, solving problems that keep us in this loop. And so as we stay in this loop, we have reincarnated many, many times. We have left and reemerged into our soul, or our soul has left and reemerged into various bodies many, many times. And so he was saying that you just don't recognize that this has been happening many, many times already, and that you just haven't done this part of the process to make yourself light enough to unhinge from that story. If circumcision were beneficial, their father would beget them from the mother that way. But the circumcision of the spirit has prevailed. So if you look at history and when our pineal glands and our third eye starts to calcify through early childhood into teenage years, the programming we are imprinted with from birth creates a circumcision of our third eye as it relates to all three eyes that need to work together. So our vision comes from all three eyes and their ability to connect with spirit. And so if that gets disconnected, it is a circumcision that was planned to kind of keep us isolated from who we truly are. And it has prevailed. The nice thing is that we can reactivate it, and we can decalcify it, and we can work on reconnecting to those processes as long as we can. I use color treatments to open it up, but there's different ways of removing brain sand, is what it's called. There's a technical term for brain sand too, but
I like brain sand.
But it's actually called brain sand.
Sometimes I like the simple term
because it's a sand basically that calcifies.
I tell my mysteries to those who are worthy of my mysteries. Whatever your right hand does, your left hand should not know what it is doing. Whatever you're doing moving into the future, you should not also be holding on to the past. So in a lot of holistic healing circles or acupuncture and color puncture, all these different things, your left hand represents the past and your right hand represents what's up now and into the future. And so that's what he's talking about, is the left hand should not know what the right hand is doing, because if the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, you're still living in the past.
You're hamstringing yourself. Gosh, there's so many metaphors.
The metaphors are great.
Oh, so good. I love metaphors.
If you bring it within you, then that which you have will save you. If you do not have it within you, then that which you do not have will kill you. And so what that means is that same story. Believe that you already have it so that, it'll manifest in your reality. It's the logic of the law of retraction. You see a lot of those teachers like Abraham Hicks and whoever else that say, oh, just imagine, believe, the prayer is the believing that it's already occurred. And that's what allows that to show up in your reality because of the resonant matching and the way that works. And he's saying that if you believe you don't have it, then through desire for it, you will chase it indefinitely and never have it, because the wanting of it is simultaneously the lack of it. And that brought me to the idea of, what does it even feel like to have something? And it feels like nothing, because it's the wanting of it that makes you think, and we are programmed to think the having of something, the relationship, the car, the house, the job, all these different things, the having of the something feels better than how you feel now.
Grass is greener, right?
Well, and so we're programmed to try and find a better feeling than what we're feeling now to attract the object. But what we're really being told is the release of the idea that what it feels like to have something is nothing. It feels exactly like you feel right now. So this car to the new car, once you've had that car, it becomes the vehicle of transport and not much else to your emotional state. And so
just think about the last time you desired like a material thing, you know what I mean? Like a car or whatever, like a new gadget or something that you just want so bad. And then once you have it, the novelty wears off. Huh?
I make yummy coffee.
That is so yummy.
That egg makes a big difference.
And you gave me shit for it.
Of course I did. It's fucking weird.
But yeah, like once you have it for a while, the novelty wears off, and the working towards it. You know what I mean? Like the isn't there anymore. So it's just here, and you still feel the same, right?
So here's this one I just realized a better translation of. Whoever has come to know the world has found the dead body. But whoever has found the dead body, of him the world is not worthy. What he's saying is the spirit, when you connect with spirit, that is what animates and brings the body to life. And when you step out of the hamster wheel in the game and look at the nature of the world, you realize that the body of the world is dead because it is no longer connected to their innate knowledge and their infinite wisdom. And so what he's saying is the people who have stepped out and connected to their infinite wisdom in that sense, the world is not worthy of them because they are here to shine. That was a good one, right?
I like that a lot. I like that one a lot.
The person who is near me is near the fire, and the person who is far from the kingdom, which I really love, because if you've sat next to me on the couch, you'll know that I probably will make you puke. At certain times of day anyway.
This man has made
because the amount of energy that gets output when near the fire, so it takes fire to destroy, it also takes fire to create. And so creation comes from that destructive and creative power of fire. And that fire is that energy. And so what he was saying was, being close to me means you will be near the fire and being burned, and the parts of you that are not you will be burned away, and that hurts. But if you are too far away from me, those things will run your life and not be burned away, and you will not be able to step into the kingdom that is the fullest version of yourself.
Do you think there's any like a divine mirror type thing happening there too? Like, not necessarily even just him, but
no,
like,
I think in general, you yourself, if you're not willing to sit in your own fire,
that's what I'm saying.
If you're not willing to sit in your own fire, in your own feelings, in your own intensity, to process that through, because it's moving. What's coming is going. And so if that is moving and you're willing to sit with it, that brings you closer to where you're trying to go, really. The images are visible to humanity, but the light within them is hidden in the image. The light of the Father will reveal itself, but the image is hidden by his light. So we have in the holograms on our body all of the information that exists. But because we have so much symbolic and ancestral and experiential programming, that gets layered over that hologram. And that hologram then causes a different, it basically masks the information that exists. And so what he's saying is, these images are visible if you remove the program and you actually look at them. But he also says that the light of the Father will reveal itself, but the image is hidden from his light. And so what he's saying is, when we die, this body dies, and we go back to the lower astral planes, which is what will end up happening if you haven't cleared this karma. You arrive and remember who you are in the context of the religious programming and things that you have experienced up to that time, and you're greeted with your guides. And so when you walk to the light, and watch my previous video if you don't understand what I'm talking about, if you walk into this light of the Father, it wipes your memory. If you wipe your memory, you're not going to remember the images and the light that you saw. And so he's talking about the fact that we have all this information and it's here, but this got imprinted over the top of it when we walked through that light, and now we can't remember it. And so when we go back up there, this is temporarily removed just long enough that we see a glimpse of what we can become, just so that this gets imprinted right back on without us realizing that's what's going to happen to us. And so it's a loop that we keep forgetting that is how our memories are wiped repeatedly, and we lose the images and we lose the insights and the information. The one who seeks will find, the one who knocks, to that one will it be opened. So what he's saying is, this is the same thing I mentioned earlier when Anastasia was talking about stuff, is that when you're looking for something, you will always find things you're looking for. So if you're looking for disease, you will find disease. If you're looking for if you think your significant other is cheating on you, you will find them to be doing something like that because you are projecting it out. And so all of the things that you are seeking, you will find, like science finds more and more information on smaller and smaller levels solely from the purpose that because they are looking for it. And so they look for it, and the looking for it is what creates it. And so if you're familiar with the concept, what's his name, Robert, the book is Biocentrism. And it's about the idea that the universe didn't create consciousness, but consciousness created the universe. And he goes through the double slit experiment, and explains a lot of things. It's a really good book that's available on PDF that is worth looking at as a scientific and quantum physics mirror of the stuff that I'm talking about. And it's a really good book. It's a well written, easy to read too, that you can find on PDF. Biocentrism. I think he has a couple of books now that are really good. I think he won a Nobel Prize for it too. So it's worth looking into. And let's go through these. So these ones were really good. I really like these ones too. So this is a really, really strong mirror, especially for right now. A usurer owned a vineyard. He gave it to some farmers so that they would work it and he might receive fruit from them. He sent his servants so that the farmers might give him the fruit of the vineyard. They seized his servant, beat him, and almost killed him. The servant went back and told his master. His master said, "Perhaps they did not recognize him." he sent another servant, and the farmers beat that other one as well. Then the master sent his son and said, 'Perhaps they will show respect for my son.' But those farmers, since they knew that he was the heir of the vineyard, seized him and killed him. Whoever has ears should hear." This is a really good message outside of the superficial one. What he's saying is, we are always given information when we are not making the right decisions or on the right path. Mm-hmm. And if we keep making the same decision through the same pattern, our consequences will eventually continue to get stronger until we realize the pattern is wrong for us. And so it's the same way, the same patterns in our relationships or in our behaviors, or when we're not sitting down, eventually our ankle gets twisted because we were not slowing down and we were not listening. So when we get injured, or when our body locks up, or when we get sick, all of these things are signs because we hadn't listened to the subtler signs along the way. None of those come from nowhere.
And it's not let's call it, the universe isn't gonna start out by breaking your back. It's gonna give you a smaller dose until the minimum effective dose is reached, right? And that minimum effective dose might be really painful and big because you didn't catch the stuff beforehand.
Mm-hmm. This one I like too because it aligns with the other stuff I was talking about in terms of color. "Whoever does not hate his father and his mother as I do will not be able to be a disciple of mine. And whoever does not love his father and his mother as I do will not be able to be a disciple of mine." And what he's talking about is there's an appreciation and a conflict around the prenatal and early life trauma that is created by your parents. And so when we come down into this experience, we chose our parents and signed a contract with them to create certain trauma for us so that we can grow in a certain way and learn certain lessons and remember who we are, okay, in a specific context. And so those prenatal traumas, when we are in our mother's womb and she's faced with various emotional conflicts or stresses, those are imprinted on us. And during our early life, when our parents are arguing in front of us, or they're sick, or they tell us no when we want something, or they're ignoring one another, or they're showing love to each other, all of those things program at a very, very deep subconscious level our behavior for the rest of our life. It is karma, an ancestral karma that comes from past lives that determines the work that we're here to do, and it's imprinted on our being here to clear it. And so what he's saying is, I hate my mother and father for doing that because it gave me a lot of work to do. But I'm really grateful for them for doing that because it helped me realize who I am.
Mm-hmm. I really like that one a lot.
Mm-hmm. This one's good too. "The kingdom of the Father is like a woman who is carrying a jar filled with flour. While she was walking on the way, very distant from home, the handle of the jar broke and the flour leaked out on the path. But she did not know it. She had not noticed the problem. When she reached her house, she put the jar down on the floor and found it empty." Which is life.
Yeah,
because people, and I actually had so many people, when I was talking about karma, say, "Oh, you can clear this karma not being aware of it. Oh, you can clean the house, the room when the room is pitch black." And I was like, no, you can't. All you're doing is you're taking this flour that has holes in the jar and you're leaking it all along the way. And when you end up at the end of the game, you're going to realize that all that flour leaked out when you could have patched up the jar and grown and salvaged and made bread from the flour. So you have to choose to stop leaking those things. Let's see. "The kingdom is like a shepherd who had 100 sheep. One of them it went astray, the largest. He left the 99, and he sought the one until he found it. After he had toiled, he said to the sheep, 'I love you more than the 99. And that is another really good one, because
that
we
one
need
resonates
to
so
choose.
much.
We need to choose what's important to us without letting the 99 other things that are telling us to pay attention to them distract us from what is most important to us. And so what he's saying is we need to find what's most important so that we can focus on that and let that drive our game without letting the committee tell us who to be and how to act and what to look for and who to protect and what to worry about.
And the expectations coming from other people that you perceive as expectations and what's the word I'm looking for around those things? Doesn't matter, but
well,
it's saying no. For example, like
it's saying no. It's saying no to what you don't want, so that you know what you do want. It's
and
the
not
contrast.
Feeling like, and it's like saying no to going out and staying home and painting, which is what I do now, and I release the guilt around saying no to my friends when they want me to come with them, because my one sheep is painting or
whatever it happens
to be in that moment.
And the thing is that people, you don't have to be married to the one thing. So your one thing will change. Like if you've seen my history, I went to school for film and storytelling and worked in Los Angeles for a number of years in production and then in development, doing script rewrites for pilots for new shows and that kind of stuff. And after doing storytelling and working in audio post-production and looking at the rhythm and flow of the stories, I was also simultaneously building up my electronics business, because I taught myself how to learn to design electronics and ended up having a passion for high-end audio and so I was able to release the cinema as this stuff grew up, and I was able to then step into my high-end audio and designing power supplies and realizing the pieces of technology in those power supplies and the way that the power supplies react to noise and EMF and to transient currents eventually led me to realize that our bodies operate the same way exactly. And so it allowed me then I designed some of the lowest noise power supplies in the world and sold them to a bunch of laboratories and developed some of those magnetic technologies for that. And eventually then, that crashed and burned with my other stories of crashing and burning, because I have had a crash and burn many, many times in my experience. And so as I started to do my movement, I then started to build up that system and take the pieces of what I experienced. And so every step along the way, as I transition into what I am now teaching everybody, everything from the movement, from the electronics, from the storytelling, from the way that you can create rhythm, all of those are pieces of the global puzzle of my process to become who I'm meant to be.
And think about if you did not allow yourself to transition from one thing to another and release the old thing, you would still be forcing yourself to do, be stuck in this level when your soul is ready to keep going and moving and learning new things. And the nature of life is change. So being stuck and pigeonholing yourself into, I am I am an accountant and I will, always be an accountant.
Well, here's the thing. Our personality creates our personal reality.
Yeah.
And so our identity creates our reality. Mm-hmm. And if you are living in an identity that doesn't serve you, your reality won't serve you. And eventually the thing that I said before with the universe knocking gently until it hits you with a hammer, it's going to do that eventually.
That's why people have midlife crisis.
Well, it's exactly why.
And it hurts too much and it builds up and it builds up and then and then you get a Lamborghini. But it's also why, it's also why my electronics business, I wasn't listening to the signals and I was sticking with trying to push it longer than I should have. And then it exploded.
And then, then I suddenly had lost $60,000 in less than 2 months because I had people people hacking my stuff open, and then I had chargebacks in other countries from people stealing my stuff, and then it was just this whole turn of events where it just basically burned my company alive through things that I had no control over. Sure. And on top of that, a huge smack in my perception of my identity because not only the fact that the business was tanking, but the things that people were accusing me of and name calling and the nasty things they were saying to me were really hard to not, I had to step outside of taking those things to heart that, whether they're, saying nasty things about me personally and who I am, or they're saying nasty things about my child, my product. All of those different things were really important to disconnect along the way. And I had to learn those lessons to be able to step forward and to teach the things that I'm teaching now. There's a couple more that were really good here. His disciples said to him, the kingdom, on what day will it come? It will not come by watching and waiting for it. They will not say, look here or look there. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it, which is something you said earlier. So I don't even need to continue.
Exactly.
The heavens will roll up before you and the earth, and whoever is living from the living one will not see death. Does Jesus not say, whoever found himself, of him the world is not worthy? Whoever has found himself, of him the world is not worthy. Simon Peter said to them, let Mary go away from us, for women are not worthy of life. Jesus said, look, I will draw her in so as to make her male, so that she too may become a living male spirit similar to you. But I say to you, for every woman who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. This is so important for the time right now. And this is getting long already, but this is really important and it's inspiring. I need to talk about it. So I've already said that the integration of masculine and feminine energies is a really big part of this process.
And it has nothing to do with gender.
It has nothing to do with gender. But it has been bastardized by the divisive
victim
mentality of that community.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I'm going to explain why this is happening. Because I have family members who are transgender. I have family members who are gay. I had dated people who were lesbian before I dated them. And so I have a lot of love for people struggling with their masculine, feminine energies. And what has happened is when we reincarnate, we are meant to alternate between masculine and feminine experiences each time. And what is happening to a lot of people, either they've had multiple experiences as the same gender in a row, or they're having the same experience just twice or whatever. And so what happens is one of two things. One, they show up in a male body, but have feminine energy. And so they don't know how to integrate the two processes because they have been focusing only on the one kind of energy instead of cultivating the balance of the other. The same way men need to express emotion and feel vulnerable as well as get stuff done. And women need to express their emotion and feel vulnerable as well as get stuff done. We all have both of those pieces of the puzzle, which is why the girl boss movement is doing what it's doing for women, because we all have the same energies. Our gender, our physical gender is a separate entity from that. And that's why a lot of times when we are trying to change the physical body, it doesn't solve the inner problem because it's not a physical issue. It is a energy issue deep down. And when we are alternating between those things, when a lot of times when somebody comes in as a female in a male's body or a male in a female's body, those energies are so distorted from past lives that it also ends up creating mental catalysts that are out of balance. And so for a lot of people who are struggling with their identity or with their gender or with the way that they relate to the world, one thing to understand is that the physical male-female gender is a program that is in our way. The energies of those genders need to be cultivated. And so we have been programmed to suppress. So as men, we are told to suppress the feminine. As women, we're told to suppress the masculine. And by keeping those suppressed, we cannot integrate and tap into our fullest power. And that is done on purpose because it's easier to control us that way. And so when we show up, we are bombarded with signals that cause that distortion in people that have the imbalance in their energies. And so
it starts so young.
It does start young, and it starts and it embeds for a really long time and creates a lot of pain because people don't understand what's really happening in their system, and that's scary. And so what that does then is as you integrate those energies, you can love everyone, you know, or have the preferences that you have without considering them taboo. And that's a really powerful place to be, because it's no longer about society. It's no longer about choosing. It's no longer about being one versus the other or having to be one versus the other. It's about being both simultaneously.
And I would look up, if you've never looked at what facets and energies are of the masculine and what energies are of the feminine, so you can see what that looks like, because when you say that,
the other thing too is don't get too distracted by it.
Yeah,
you know, it's really easy, and I know you get distracted by it sometimes too.
I get distracted.
That it's really easy to find a thing that explains something and marry yourself to it as the only thing to work on. And the masculine and feminine energies are a part of the puzzle, but really they already exist, and you just have to stop suppressing the one you're suppressing. Not that you are, because that's usually what the case is. It's not that you haven't turned one of them on. It's that you have spent your life suppressing it because you're not allowed to feel it.
Already there.
So the idea is that you give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. You give yourself permission to desire what you're desiring. You give yourself permission to process the way that you want to process and experience the way that you want to experience, without the outside influence dictating the order of operations for you. And that's a place that is really hard to get to because of the worries of the societal programs. And it's one thing to say it. It's a whole other thing. And I personally struggled with this for a long time. I've had this information to share for a very long time, for months, and it took me basically dying and being ripped out of my body to be told, okay, here's the last couple of pieces of this. Not the last couple, there's always more. But here's some more pieces of the information that ties some puzzles together. Now it's time for you to share. And so it becomes... we all have those different layers of struggle that ebb and flow, because even with my growth and my process, even though I have the access to all of this information, there are still going to be entities that attach to me. There's still going to be imbalances on energy, because I'm still affected by the circuit that is programming us. And so what I do is I do a lot more work to amplify my own integrity and my own signal and my own identity, so that no matter how much of an outside bad signal that I'm being bathed with, my signal output is so strong that it doesn't affect me. And so that's what ends up happening as we get entity attachments, and we end up having tools to be able to pull those parasites out of us so they're not creating through us. You can start to have tools to have better emotional intelligence, to say what I'm feeling is me, what I'm feeling is another entity, or what I'm feeling is whatever, is a program, or what I'm feeling is the signals being sent from the moon. All of these things are layers that you can start to become sensitive to give you a better roadmap of what is happening. So, yeah. I think that's probably good. We're getting long on time.
We're getting really long.
12 minutes. An hour and 12 minutes.
I don't know, okay, there's webinars that long, but
that's true. This is good, but we're giving.
I think we're good. Let's wrap it up for today.
Okay, so we'll probably do another one tomorrow, another thing. If you guys have questions, if you like this stuff, obviously these are long, so obviously if I'm posting too many of them, it's going to be hard to keep up. But I'm going to post a series of them and keep digging into this stuff. If there's stuff that you have questions about, feel free to ask. And if you like the content, just let me know what you like, and I'll continue to expand on the things that you guys are interested in learning more of. So hopefully this helped you. It's a different insight, a different look on some of the things we've talked about, probably different than things other people have talked about anywhere. So, a lot of it will probably create some cognitive dissonance in some places, but I also deep down, it's going to resonate. So,
so good.
And
the long format is nice because it's, you can read a sentence, but it has a whole entire iceberg's worth of depth to it that, you know what I mean? So it's kind of nice. I like it.
Cool.
Yay.
Okay, bye.